and what will happen afterwards. And with this we open the floor inshallah ta'ala for Q&A, and I'll begin with we have alhamdulillah some live questions here. So our brother says that from Chicago, that what if you heard the voice of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Is shaitan forbidden from imitating his voice or only his form? This is a good question. I do not know of anybody who has just heard the voice of the Prophet ﷺ, and I don't know the answer to this question, to be honest, because the hadith says, فَإِنَّهُ لَا يُمَثَّلُ بِي. He doesn't take my mithil. And my mithil could generally be his form. However, the voice is also a mithil. To this question, I will say, لَا أَدْرِي. I don't know the answer to this question. The next question we have is that if the good people go to sleep in the grave, and they will wake up on the Day of Judgment by saying, who woke us up, that مَنْ بَعَثَنَا مِنْ مَرْقَدِنَا, how can they be in the barzakh awaiting the trumpet? So we mentioned, so the question is as follows. Let me rephrase it. Will the souls of the righteous go to sleep or will they be awake? And I mentioned this, I think 4 or 5 lessons ago, that in reality we do not know. There is one and only one narration in which the soul is told, go ahead and sleep, and it will fall into a sleep until the Day of Judgment. How do we reconcile this with the hadith I just mentioned, that they're going to be interacting with the people who come? This is from the ilm al-ghayb. Allah knows best. If someone were to say, hypothetically, that they are active for a time frame such that the people whom they knew and loved, it is that time frame when they're going to come back. Because after 100 years, nobody that you knew in this dunya is going to be there now. It's gone now. If they are active for a time frame and then they are told to go to sleep, and this will also solve the issue of how can some people live longer than others, because some people will be put into that trance until the Day of Judgment. In the end of the day, we do not know, and it is a different paradigm. And our minds cannot understand the time and how time takes place in the barzakh. But looking at the evidences, a possible interpretation is what I have said, that they will be active for a period of time from our dunya's perspective. And then after that time frame, whenever Allah Azza wa Jal wills, and perhaps, the more iman they have, the more active they will be. Hence, the shaheed will always be alive, and the prophets are alive in their graves. So perhaps to the level of their iman, they shall remain active as well in the barzakh before they are told to go to sleep. And this is for the righteous. As for the unrighteous, we know that they will be punished until the barzakh happens, and Allah Azza wa until the trumpet is blown, and Allah knows. But any questions from the audience, because I want to alternate. Yes, bismillah. So the brother is saying that if I do something, anything, monetary, Hajj, Umrah, can I do it on behalf of one person, or must I do it on behalf of one person, or can I give it in portions and shares? So Ibn al-Qayyim mentions this explicitly in others, and that is that you can do whatever you want, because Ibn al-Qayyim's position is the thawab of the deed, it is yours, and you have the right to credit whomever you want. However, just like if you have $100 and you credit it to 2 people versus credit it to 1 person, is there not a difference? Similarly, if you have 1 Hajj and you credit it to 2 people, that is not the same as crediting it to 1 person. But it is allowed to do that. No problems there. You may do it, but I just said, when you have 1, whatever it is, and you do it, and it's not a problem to do, right? It's better than nothing, much better than nothing. It is allowed to do. Sisters, any questions? Yes, go ahead. And the what? So the sister is saying, if we see a deceased in the dream and they are in a good place, insha'Allah ta'ala, this is a positive sign. And we read into that, and it is a part of our iman to interpret positive dreams positively. We're going to come to it inshallah in one of our lectures. It is not a part of our iman to read into negative dreams. Bad dreams, nightmares, we don't think too much about them. because they are not from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Good dreams are from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when we see a deceased happy, when we see a deceased in a good state, when we see a deceased, enjoying, we take this as a positive sign that inshaAllah ta'ala they're in a good state. And the opposite, we just discard it. And if we want to do some dhikr and good deeds and whatnot for that person, that is also good, but we don't read in and we don't tell other people about any negative dreams. We have a person from online. Can you tell us what the Jews and the Christians believe about the barzakh? That is a whole lecture altogether. As for the Yahud, there is a lot of discussion amongst them. In fact, by and large, many of them don't even believe in Qiyamah anymore. They don't believe in an actual physical resurrection. So the modern movements, even many of the Orthodox, they don't necessarily believe in an actual Qiyamah that's going to take place. And so they have gone away from the beliefs of their earlier ancestors. And as for the Christians, that is depending on which firqa and group that you ask, they have a whole diversity of views. Some of them do affirm a type of barzakh, a type of purgatory, and others do not do that. And maybe in a lecture we'll go over that inshallah. Question over here. Is it possible to interact with the prophets in the barzakh? The other prophets, I think he's asking, because we said you can interact with the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. As for the other prophets, why not? It is possible to. And it is mentioned that Imam al-Bukhari's mother saw Ibrahim alayhi salam in a dream. And Ibrahim alayhi salam was the one who told Imam al-Bukhari's mother about certain things. So this is something that can happen, no problem. Question that, what should we do if we see somebody who's deceased telling us that they're being punished in the qabr? Allah al-Musta'an. This is a very terrifying thing. We ask Allah's mercy and rahmah. Firstly, don't tell anybody the details of these dreams. We are not supposed to tell bad dreams to anybody. Secondly, if you feel that you should do something on their behalf, feel free to do that. Excellent. And if you want to tell the family and friends of that person generic things, let's do something on their behalf without telling the details, because we do not tell the details. It is possible that this person is somehow, Allah is allowing him or her to reach out for help for good deeds. It's possible. And it is also possible that shaitan is playing with you. We will not know. Now, inshallah, we hope that there's a gut instinct, by the way, right? We hope this, because there is a hadith, اتَّقُوا فِرَاسَةَ الْمُؤْمِنِ فَإِنَّ فِرَاسَةَ الْمُؤْمِنِ حَقٌّ. Fear the intuition of the believer, because the intuition of the believer is true. We would hope that the righteous, if shaitan wants to deceive, the righteous is going to feel, something is not right here. This is not a real dream, that is haqq. And if it is an actual relative that is reaching out for help, Allah is going to allow that person, that the person will feel, you know what, I should do something. So that is based on intuition. But once again, you cannot base law on intuition. You cannot base an actual verdict on how you feel. You can personally do something, no problem. But that's not something that you can make it into law. Any questions from our brothers here? Bismillah, go ahead.
The person died and leaves some debt, and is not being paid, like example, like me by house. But if I die and the children are debt for 30 years, so that I will be punished.
The question is about debt and paying off of the debt. So when it comes to the issue of debt, generally speaking, if a person was careless in taking debts and did not take adequate precautions and was simply wanting money from people for the sake of money and lived a careless life, that person will be susceptible to be punished, the punishment of debt. However, if a person is being cautious and only takes a debt when he or she needs to and tries one's best, and as Allah says, Allah knows your niyyah, Allah knows what you're trying to do. So the one who takes adequate precautions and the one who was forced into a debt, inshallah, that person is not sinful per se. Nonetheless, we know that debt is something that we should try our best to get out of. And as for the issue that you mentioned, obviously the house is collateral and mortgage. So aslan, if that needs to be done, then that will be sold and it will be given back, inshallah ta'ala. Not that I'm saying it's halal or haram, I'm just saying that's a separate issue altogether. Sisters, any questions? Just go ahead, bismillah.
So as you mentioned last week that restoration of Quran is allowed over the deceased. So I was just wondering then why the Quran
What did I say about that? Okay, so our sister is saying that, can I talk a little bit more about the issue of Quran Khanis? As I said in our last lecture, that the vast majority of classical ulama and scholars, and even in our times, pretty much all of the strands of Islam, they allow the gifting of good deeds to the deceased, and reciting the Quran is a good deed. So it can be gifted to the deceased. That having been said, the issue comes about encouraging the specifics of what day and what procedure and what methodology. And I have given a more detailed lecture online. It is called The Reality of Bid'ah. And I go over the various definitions of bid'ah in the various schools of Islam. And in that lecture you will see some schools were a bit stricter than others. And some schools said to specify the unspecified is a type of bid'ah. So if you're supposed to gift the Quran, that's fine. But to say on the 40th day you should read 40 pages for 40 minutes, I'm just giving an example. Okay, what have you done? You have specified the unspecified. Okay, and they say that this is now opening up a can of worms, a Pandora's box. It's a slippery slope. And the other school says, if you do this for logistical reasons, if you just do this for, and you understand that this is not from Allah and His Messenger, and you just do it for something to make it easier for the people, in and of itself, there's nothing wrong with doing it. And this is another strand of Islam as well. So because of this tension, you will find some people say, even those that said you may gift the Quran to the deceased, some of them said you should not do actual Quran Khanis. Because what happens in a Quran Khani? You will specify a time and a date and a place and a location, and you will all pass out one juz and whatnot and do that. And the other group is going to say, so what? It's better than nothing. And it's an incentive to get the people together and read a juz for the deceased. You understand what I'm saying here? And in that lecture, I went into a lot more academic detail. And I simply said, each paradigm has its proponents and its pros and cons. And I left it at that. I want to be very clear here. I don't consider it something to be bad or evil. At the same time, I am sympathetic to this issue of opening this door. And people start thinking things to be sunnah that might just be mubah, right? And this is one such example. The Prophet ﷺ never explicitly said, read the Quran for the deceased. I believe it is allowed, but he never did that. Without a doubt, giving charity for the deceased is better. Sadaqah jariyah is better. Hajj and Umrah is the best. But the perception that the Muslim masses have is what? Quran Khani is the best. And see, this is what the other group says, like, guys, when you start doing something that isn't exactly sunnah, it comes at the cost of an actual sunnah. You guys following this point? Right? And I sympathize with that. At the same time, it's not wrong per se, as long as the people know that this is not something the Prophet ﷺ explicitly did. Because the other group is saying, and again, Ibn al-Qayyim is the one who said this, that the concept of gifting the Prophet ﷺ allowed. And therefore, if he allowed all of these lists, we went over so many things, if somebody had asked him, can I read the Quran? He would have also said yes, because he's saying yes to everything. So the concept is that it is all permissible, but now you're going to put all of these specific conditions, and then people might not understand that actually this is not explicitly in Islam. So we open up a Pandora's box, and so I'm trying to be, Allahu musta'an, I'm trying to be gentle on both sides. That's really what I'm trying. And I'm trying to say, no, I am saying, both of these groups need to stop hating on the other side that much. They both have an element of legitimacy to them. And the same controversy goes for the Mawlid and anti-Mawlid camps, by the way. Because it's the same thing, to specify the unspecified. My position is both of these groups need to chill. They both have a legitimate paradigm that they're coming from. Even if, maybe because of my last 20 years, maybe it's my own bias, I don't know, deep down inside, my sympathies are still somewhat towards the more stricter side, because I am worried about the slippery slope. I'm worried about this, you know. At the same time, this doesn't mean that the other group is evil or bad. Like I said, if some people are coming together to read the Quran, I mean, what's wrong with reading the Quran? And what else do you expect people to do who are emotionally traumatized? They've lost a dead person, whatnot. They want to do something. So, our culture has organized Quran Khanis. You express communal grief. Believe it or not, psychologically therapeutic. And in my humble opinion, I understand that. No problem. It has a point. So, I neither want to encourage, but at the same time, I'm not really discouraging. So I'm just trying to be very neutral here. I hope you're in. That's all I can say. I'll be this clear, inshallah. Other final questions? Bismillah. Yes, go ahead. We had mentioned this earlier. The brother is saying that why is Allah specifically mentioning that don't consider the shaheed to be dead? They are alive with Allah. Isn't everyone alive? I mentioned this in one of the early lectures, the Hayat al-Barzakh is of different categories. The highest category is the Hayat of the Prophets, the life of the Prophets. And underneath that is the life of the shaheed. And then I just said, perhaps lower levels, they might even go into a trance after a while, because some hadith mention naum to the deceased as well. So the awareness and the life is of different levels, and the shaheed's level is much higher than that of the average righteous. That's the point of this ayah, inshallah. Yes, final question, inshallah, because we have too much. Final question, Bismillah, go ahead.
Did our Prophet
Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam
explicitly say about the group that we belong to? Did he belong to any group? Means like Shia or Sunni? Are we sinning by calling us either Sunni or Shia?
So this question I answered in a lot of detail the first month I was here, that should we call ourselves Sunnis or not. It's actually in the Epic Q&A. If you listen to it, I have given a long lecture about this. It's a very good question. It's coming from a point of love, that why do we call ourselves anything? And it's a nice question. And we wish we didn't have to. And it's not wajib to. Nobody's saying, I'm not saying it's wajib. In the end of the day, historically, the ummah has differed into thousands of different interpretations. And for practical purposes, you know, when you want to marry your son and daughter, you want to make sure they're marrying somebody of a similar mindset. Just for harmony. Forget haram and halal. Birds of a feather flock together. Right? Forget haram and halal. A marriage will succeed when there is rapport between husband and wife. Right? So if husband and wife have radically different views about theology, about iman and akhir, what are you going to do? You're going to quiz them about the whole arkan al-iman? Or you're going to say, which group do you belong to? It comes in handy. There's times when it comes in handy. Right? So these labels can be divisive, and that's wrong. And these labels can be informative and educational. And that's the point that we're trying to do. And I've given a longer answer to this, inshallah, in an early lecture. And I have to, okay. I can't say no to our elderly. Explain the Mu'tazila group. The Mu'tazila were one of the first groups to rise in early Islam. And they were the ones who persecuted Imam Ahmad and imprisoned him. And they claimed that the Quran is created, and Imam Ahmad said the Quran is uncreated. And the Mu'tazila reinterpreted the attributes of Allah, and most significantly, they denied qadr. They said, we don't believe that Allah controls the creation. They said Allah knows the future, He doesn't control the future. He doesn't will the future, He knows the future. So what happens, we do, not Allah does. So they said, we do our deeds, Allah does not have anything to do with our actions. Because they were purely Hellenistic Greek, and they said, if Allah, quote unquote, forced us to do it and then rewarded and punished us, this would be unjust on Allah's part. So Allah knows, but Allah does not control. Man creates his or her own deeds. And the Ahl Sunnah said one of the pillars of Iman is Qadr. Everything happens with Qadr. Not a leaf falls except that Allah wills it. And so many hadith about Qadr. So the main difference between Mu'tazila and Sunnis is the issue of Qadr. As I said, when it comes to Akhirah and Barzakh and Hayatana, it is essentially the same as ours. And that's why even if we disagree, it's wrong to deny Qadr, but there's still Muslims within Islam. And with this, inshallah, I'm taking a trip for Umrah. I'll be back, inshallah, early January. And we will then, inshallah, start our new series, which will begin with the trumpet being blown. Not the actual trumpet, but we're going to talk about the trumpet being blown. Until then, may Allah Azza wa Jal protect me and you and allow us to benefit from this knowledge. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala abdi Muhammadin wa alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.
لا يزال الخير حيا لا يزال إن في الدنيا سلاما وظلال أخبر الأيام أنها في وصال قم بنا وانظر لآيات الجمال قم بنا وانظر لآيات الجمال